Okay guys, so this is going to be a pretty exhaustive video on how to program a Victron BMV 712 to get the most accurate results via your charge percentage. So first thing you want to do is open up the Victron Connect app. This is going to show you the devices you have connected in the system. Then you're going to go to the BMV 712. You'll connect that. This takes you to the home page that gives you a general overview of your system. Shows your battery percentage, battery voltage, current, amp hours consumed, time remaining, those type things. But to program, you want to go to the upper right hand corner to the gear and touch that. That takes you to the settings menu. And the first thing we want to do is touch the battery. This is going to take you to the battery settings menu. And these are the factory default settings that come from Victron when you get the system. We're going to talk first about how does the BMV 712 know what the percentage of your batteries are. Well, you have to tell it. And you got to program the information in there so that it can calculate based on your usage how much capacity is left within those batteries. This is not a 1000% accurate system, and it does need to be charged fully via a generator or shore power, say at least twice a month, in order to maintain its accuracy, because there are errors associated with them, and they do tend to slip over time as far as their capacity reading. And by charging the batteries back to 100% full with some sort of shore power or generator source helps resync the system and maintain a reasonable amount of accuracy. So let's first talk about what the battery monitor uses. There are 4 criteria that it uses to determine the state of charge. The first one is the battery capacity. Battery capacity is simply the size of your battery bank in amp hours. You use the 20 amp hour rating of your battery to program this in. I have 800 amp hours of battery, so I'm simply going to go in here and change this to 800. If you have 4 Battle-Born batteries, you would change that to 400 based on your setting. The second criteria that the BMV uses to determine your state of charge is the charged voltage. This is the number that the battery must overcome in order for the BMV to determine if the battery is charged. Normally, most industry standards state that this charged voltage number needs to be a quarter volt, 0.25 volts less than the float voltage, and also greater than the nominal voltage of the battery. So, if you had a battery that floated at 13.5, you would set this to 13.25, and then your battery resting voltage would probably be somewhere around 13. But this number for lithium, this 0.25 below the float voltage, is too low for a lithium battery bank. Lithium batteries don't float. They don't need to float. They don't need to absorb. They pretty much bulk. And when they're done with the bulk aspect of it, then it's more of a battery balancing aspect where they're balancing the cells at a higher voltage. Once the lithium batteries are done with the bulk phase, they're essentially charged. And there's very little going on in the absorption stage other than higher voltage and low amps. So what I typically like to do is set this charged voltage at a quarter volt less than your bulk or absorption phase. So we're going to set this, my battery's bulk at 14.25, so therefore I'm going to set this at 14 volts. Battle-Born batteries typically bulk at 14.6, so you would want to set this at 14.3. Next, the discharge floor. The discharge floor is the amount of capacity you're willing to use out of the batteries. If you're lead acid batteries, 50% is typically your discharge floor. With lithium batteries, obviously lithium batteries can be discharged significantly deeper than lead acid batteries, so this number can be changed For demonstration purposes or this video, we're going to change it to 20%. This means that I'm willing to use the top 80% of my batteries through normal use. That means when the battery monitor reads 100%, the batteries are 100%, and when the battery monitor reads 0%, there's still 20% capacity left in the batteries. So we'll set that to 20. The tail current. Tail current is the amount of amps that are going into the battery when they're fully charged. So on a normal situation, when you have batteries that are going into float mode, there's still a certain amount of amps that are flowing into the battery. This number default is 4%. This is high on larger lithium battery banks. And let's use this as an example. Let's say we only have a battery capacity bank or a battery bank size that is 100 amps. Well, 100 amp hour battery, 4% of that is 4 amps. So you might very well have a battery that's fully charged and still have 4 amps going into it. But if you have a larger battery bank like this one, an 800 amp hour battery bank, 4% of 800 amp hours is 32 amps. There is no way you're still going to have 32 amps flowing into that battery and be fully charged. That's still too many amps going inside the battery. So you need to change this percentage, and I'm going to change it down to 1%. So 1% now means that 8 amps will be flowing into the batteries when they're fully charged. This is just one of the conditions that the battery monitor has to overcome, and I'll explain in it a little more detail after we finish the definitions through the list. The charge detection time of 3 minutes. This is the amount of time that the battery has to meet the criteria in order for the battery monitor to deem they're fully charged. 3 minutes is not a very long time, and there are several scenarios with solar charging that this 3-minute window can get you into trouble. So we're going to change this to 10 minutes. So that means that the batteries have to meet the criteria of the battery monitor for 10 minutes in order for the battery monitor to deem that they're fully charged. The Peucert exponent basically is an efficiency measure for the batteries. The faster you discharge batteries or the larger the load that you pull out of a battery, the less efficient the battery is. There's a heat byproduct or some inefficiencies in the battery that cause you not to get the full capacity of the battery if you do large discharges. So what you got to do is this industry standard for lithium batteries is typically 1.05. And that basically means that, again, if you discharge the battery at a low amp draw, you get more amp hours out of it. If you discharge at a higher amp draw, you're going to get less amp hours out of it. This 1.05 is the multiplier used to determine that efficiency. The charge efficiency factor for lithium batteries is 99%. They're extremely efficient as far as charging. That means for every 99 amp hours you put for every 100 amp hours you put into the battery, you get 99 amp hours back out of it. So 99% efficiency, there's very little loss in the charging process. The current threshold, that window of 1/10 of an amp is good. No reason to worry about that there. And then the average time to go period being 3 minutes. That means it looks at a 3-minute window to calculate your average time to go. And that seems to be okay. A biggie is this battery starts synchronized. The battery state of charge after reset will be 100%. You need to turn this guy off. That would mean that if for any reason your battery monitor were to lose power, you were to turn off your battery disconnect switch or anything like that, when you turned it back on, your batteries would immediately go to 100%. You don't want it to do that, because if you turn the battery switch off and they're 60%, and then you turn the battery switch back on and they go to 100, there's some discrepancy there. So we don't want to do that. All right, let's go back out of the battery settings now real quick and just check the other stuff through. Relay is fine. Alarm, I don't want to turn the alarm on, so I'm turning that off. The display. All right, this is one we got to go through here. We don't want to display the mid voltage because we don't have a mid voltage setup on this system, and we don't have a starter because it's on an Airstream travel trailer, so there's no starter battery in there. So we'll turn those two things off so they don't display and kind of cloud up the system. Miscellaneous, we want our auxiliary input to be temperature because we have a temperature sensor, and we want it to be Fahrenheit for that. And then we want to check the BMV, the VE network, and it is connected to a VE network, so that's good. So let's go back to battery then real quick, and let's just talk through a couple of more things. See, it changed my charge voltage. I don't know why it does that, but we want to go in and change this to 14 volts again. Okay, so the criteria that the battery monitor needs in order to realize the batteries are 100% charged is the charged voltage, means the voltage of the batteries must be greater than 14 volts. The tail current of 1% means that the amps going into the battery must be less than 8 amps, and it has to maintain that for 10 minutes. Once it does that, then the battery monitor will know the batteries are 100%. Now let's talk about why this 14 volts and this 1% are important numbers for large lithium battery banks charged with an MPPT solar charge controller. Okay, you've been off grid for a few days and your batteries are depleted, and you've got a good sunny day and your solar is kicking. I mean, you're putting out the amps, and all of a sudden a cloud comes over and shades your panels. Well, the amps going into the battery are going to drop significantly faster than the voltage of the panels. Therefore, you could find yourself in a situation to where the battery voltage was greater than the 14 volts. The amps going into the battery were less than the 8 amps. And if you have this charge detection time set at 3 minutes, if it maintained that, if that cloud stayed overhead for 3 minutes, the scenario or the criteria for the battery monitor to think your batteries were 100% would all fall into place. And your volts would be high, your amps would be low, and it would maintain it for a period of time, and your battery monitor would resynchronize itself to 100%, all because a little rain cloud slid over the top of your solar panels and stayed there for a short period of time. This could also happen if you were in a situation where you were charging your solar or charging your batteries with solar, and you decided you wanted to turn your inverter on and use the microwave for 5 minutes. Well, when you turn the microwave on, that's going to decrease the amount of amps you have going into the battery off of the solar because you're using some amps to run the microwave. And the voltage may actually stay up if it's bright and sunny outside. So your voltage may be higher than 14 volts. Your amps going into the battery may be less than 8. And if it does it for that shorter period of time, if it's programmed for the 3 minutes, then your batteries may synchronize back to 100%, whether you want them to or not, and they definitely wouldn't be charged up. So this runs into the scenario where people say, my battery monitor still says my batteries are 60%, but my voltage is only reading 11 volts on the battery and my batteries are dead. What happened? Well, more than likely, we had the settings too conservative for your system. So by raising this charged voltage, instead of being just a 1/4 volt less than float, and raising it to a 1/4 volt less than absorption, by dropping this tail current down so that the amps have to be a lot less going in, and then raising this charge detection time to 10 minutes so that it has to maintain that criteria for 10 minutes instead of 3 minutes to meet the 100% state of charge, you run a better likelihood of maintaining your state of charge on your batteries and not running into a situation where you get out of whack. Anyway, I hope this helps some of you out there with programming issues, or if you've had reliability issues as far as your percentage is concerned for your batteries. Remember, these things are not 1,000% effective. They're a good reference point. Your battery should be charged fully via some sort of shore power situation or generator at least twice a month. Say once every 2 weeks, you need to bring them back up to full so that you can resynchronize this monitor and know that it's accurate. And anyway, I hope that helps. If any of you guys have any questions, please feel free to message me. You can also email me at airstreamnutsandbolts@gmail.com. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.